staggering the board members, staggering the... Yes. Holiday and good afternoon. Thank you everyone for being here with us today. Today's date is November 4th, 2025. This afternoon's public hearing held by the Committee on Education, Libraries, and Public Broadcasting is called to order. The time is now 2:00 p.m. Some housekeeping matters that I will briefly discuss so we can get right to work. The first notices of this public hearing was disseminated to all senators and media outlets on October 28, 2025, with its second notice disseminated on October 31st, 2025. These hearing notices were also made available on Candid News Group, the Guam Legislature's website, our legislative calendar, and the Government of Guam's public notice portal. Today we will hear testimony on Bill number 201-38, COR, an act to amend subsection 3102.3 of Article 1, Chapter 3, Division 2, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to extending terms of office and implementing staggered terms for the Guam Education Board to enhance stability, continuity, and focus on student outcomes. And Bill number 204-38 COR, an act to amend subsection 3102.1 and 3125 of Article 1, Chapter 3, Division 2, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to requiring Guam Education Board confirmation of deputy superintendent's appointments to enhance oversight, accountability, and focus on student outcomes. At this time, I'd like to now welcome my colleagues who are joining us this morning: Vice Speaker Tony Yata, Senator Tello Taitagui, Senator Shelley Calvo, Senator Sean Gumatauta, and Senator Therese Terlai. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone in attendance of Legislature Guahan's general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chairperson before speaking and shall state their full name for the record. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of today's agenda. Personal inferences to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. Pursuant to Section 11.07 of the 38th Guam Legislature Standing Rules, a chairperson may order the removal from a hearing of a committee or a subcommittee of any person who is not a member of Legislature Guam and who fails to observe proper decorum. Any violation to the general rule of conduct will result in immediate removal from this public hearing room. At this time, we'll be hearing Bill number 201-38, introduced by myself, Senator Vincent A.B. Borja, an act to amend subsection 3102.3 of Article 1, Chapter 3, Division 2, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to extending terms of office and implementing staggered terms for the Guam Education Board to enhance stability, continuity, and focus on student outcomes. I'll now proceed with my opening remarks. Buenas and Hafa my colleagues, and to the people of Guam. We will now receive testimony on Bill 201-38, which proposes reforms to the structure of the Guam Education Board. As Chairman of the Committee on Education, I introduce this bill to address the challenge to our education system: instability in its governance. Effective long-term planning and consistent policy implementation are impossible when leadership is in constant flux. Bill 201 seeks to promote greater stability, continuity, and institutional knowledge by extending the terms of both elected and appointed board members from 2 and 3 years, respectively, to 4 years. Furthermore, it establishes staggered terms for elected members. This change will ensure that the board always retains a core of experienced members, allowing for smoother transitions and a more consistent focus on strategic planning and student achievement. Our goal is to create a transparent, accountable, and effective education board that can build and sustain momentum on initiatives. By reducing frequent turnover, we empower the board to develop deeper expertise and maintain a steady hand in guiding the Guam Department of Education. I want to thank my co-sponsors for the support of this measure: Senator Shelley Calvo, Senator Sabrina Salas-Matanani, Vice Speaker Tony Yata, Senator Tina Rose Muñoz-Barnes, and Senator Sean Gumatauta. Your partnership highlights our shared commitment to building a stronger foundation for public education. Today, I look forward to hearing your testimony on how these structural changes can best serve our community and, most importantly, our students. And now we'll call upon those who wish to testify on this proposed measure. Dr. Meninchip, if you would like to start. Oh. I know you said
Thank you,
had
Mr.
to
Chairman.
leave.
If I may
Okay.
defer to the superintendent, he's more learned in these areas than I am. Thank you.
Thank you. My testimony will be brief. I'm Dr. Eric Swanson, Superintendent of Schools for the Guam Department of Education. You have a copy of the testimony before you, but I'm also wanting to read into this. There may be further discussion, of course. The following testimony is presented from my perspective as incumbent superintendent of the Guam Department of Education. This testimony is developed through my professional experience and formal education over a lifetime and is not a testimony of the Guam Education Board. The Guam Education Board may have a somewhat different perspective and wish to present it separately. I have provided the same input as the bill was being formulated, but wish to provide it on the record as well. My experience here with the Guam Education Board, combined with a long history of experience in other public P-12 school systems in several states, tempers my suggestions on this bill. I concur with and need to develop the need to develop a system of staggered elections and appointments. This allows for regular change but helps preserve instructional or institutional knowledge and dampen potential knee-jerk reactions to temporary pressures that could have a negative long-term effect. I propose adding an additional section B3C on page 4. Add elected members are limited to 2 consecutive terms. Should a member desire a 3rd term, they must lay out 1 election cycle, minimum of 2 years, before running for election on a 3rd or subsequent term. This is a term limit and promotes engaging new voices in the P-12 policy making and implementation for the greater good of all Guam's learners. I firmly believe these changes with limits will guarantee fresh voices in the work of educating our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swanson. Dr. Minich.
Thank you, Senator Borja and Senators. My name is Ron McNinch. I'm an elected member of the Guam School Board. I'm not speaking on behalf of the school board. I'm just a loudmouth who happens to be elected to serve on the school board. So this is my input. Basically, I do have a number of points. I do support the concept of having longer terms for the school board. I also support the concept of having staggered terms. I think it's a great idea. But I do have a couple of other suggestions. I did email my testimony to the panel a little bit earlier today, and certainly I did write them down. But I'll just go over the points kind of in bullet point format very briefly. I believe of the 9 members, we have 6 that are elected. I think you should elect all 9 of them. And in fact, you should give them 6-year terms, so that would allow the public to elect 3 board members every election. And that'll create continuity and stability within the board, because having a 2-year term is a very big problem, and there's way too much turnover in general. And there's a simple way to do that. The University of Guam Board of Regents is 6 years. This is a fairly common model for education. And it will also help on making strategic plans work out, because you have a longer term and you have people with more experience. Second, I would say lower the candidate age down to 18 years old. Right now it's 25. Why should it be 18 years old? Because our young people are given the right to vote, but they're not ever given the right to run for office. And school boards across the country have 18-year-olds running for the school board. And young people actually make very good school board members. I'm not in favor of appointing young people to the school board as the practice in other places. I think that they can competitively run, and probably if that's adopted, a future governor will come from a young elected school board member one day. I'd also like to suggest that the legislature take a look at the hoops that are required to make people get elected here. The paperwork is very stifling, and it kind of deters people from running. And I never raise money, and yet I have to file, as all of you do also, many, many pages of paperwork that have all zeros on it. And I'm held to filing that paperwork. I'd like to just simply file a waiver saying, or an assertion saying I've raised no money, because I never raise money. I'm just a loudmouth who talks a lot, and that gets me enough votes to then get elected later on. And so there's ways that candidates for these kinds of boards can get elected. It makes it much, much more simple in that regard. If the board had 9 elected members rather than the current 6 elected members, it would allow 3 members each to serve at the elementary, middle, and then high school levels, making specialist mini boards. So then that group of 3 can then concentrate on the issues related to those particular levels of education. The board should also be more of a governing board rather than simply a policy board. And it should have, this would address a number of concerns. The amount of powers that the board has or doesn't have should be revisited and certainly discussed with all the right stakeholders. And finally, the chair of this board is limited to 2 one-year terms. In my view, having a good, solid chair can work wonders, and rather than having a musical chairs kind of chair. And certainly, we've had many good chairs. Our current chair is a very good chair. But I would like to see the board members be able to serve more than just 2 years, because many of the chair is certainly the person who sets the tone and tenor of the board, and it requires all the board members to support them every year. And so it's a good way of making more of a strategic vision for education. Senators, I appreciate this wonderful opportunity to talk today, and I certainly, whatever I can do to help, if you have questions about my testimony, please let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. McNinch. And before we move on, I want to recognize my colleague, Senator Sean Gumatanta, who joined us earlier. And now we'll go, thank you for your testimonies, and now we'll open it up for questions from the panel. We'll go ahead and start with Senator Taitagui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, would it be okay if we ask the Guam Election Commission to come up and also provide any comments they may have, if they have any at all?
You weren't on the list, but welcome, Director Pangilinan, and thanks for coming. And we're always open to your feedback.
Maria Pangilinan, Guam Election Commission's Executive Director. So I don't have any comments, and we're ministerial in nature, but there is something that needs to be changed, we believe, on Section 2. Page 3, line 12. This should be updated to no earlier than 160 days before the general election and no later than 90 days after a primary election. And then on line 14 of the same page, it should be 40 days prior to a special election, because the special election has to be held 60 days, within 60 days. And again, we're ministerial in nature, but I'm open to giving you information should you need it.
Thank you. We'll definitely, if there are any other questions as we continue to finalize the bill, and markup, we'll reach out if we have any questions. Thank you, Director Pangilinan.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as the Oversight Chair of Guam Elections, I reached out to the Guam Election just to make sure that they provide some kind of input, during the public hearing, and I thank you so much for being here. One of the questions that I have regarding these staggered terms and determining which individual is not required, but is authorized to run in that particular election, and to follow through with all the information regarding how long they've been serving, how many terms, et cetera, that all this bill covers. How does the Guam Election Commission, how will they ensure that, the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted to ensure you get the right people on the ballot?
So, because all elected officials should be honest and forthright, we have all of you have signed a certification of qualification that is notarized. So that would be the way Guam Election Commission handles it. Now, if it happens that they find out that they are not qualified, then it would have to be dealt with another level, not at the Guam Election Commission level, unless we receive a complaint. If we receive a complaint, we will look into it with our legal counsel.
But there is nothing requiring Department of Education to give you information like this individual has been sitting on the board for, you know, let's say this bill passes, right? And you've been sitting on the board for 2 terms, and these individuals do not qualify anymore. Does Department of Education at least, you know, tell you that information, or you just do your own research?
So we have what we call the Election Comparative Analysis Report that we submit to the legislature every even year. In that report, we have a history of the people that win about the elected officials. So from that document, we can figure out who can and who qualifies and who doesn't.
Okay. That sounds good. So definitely you got this covered, and I noticed the changes too in there that we talked about. So other than that, you know, I really don't have any other questions. I do look forward to seeing some kind of balance, you know, at the board level, you know, and allowing, you know, new individuals coming up there. I like it being, you know, that there's a limited time for a person to serve, and then they come out and take a break, you know, and then they can come back. You know, I also, the issue that I've also seen is that why does those running for elected board for DOE have to get petitions signed when this is a board? The same thing with CCU. It doesn't require petitions. Attorney General doesn't require petitions, neither does the public auditor. So do you have any issues if I create legislation that I plan on doing it? Have any issues with the board not having to have petitions like the other boards that get elected through the public? Do you have any concerns? Do you have any concerns with that?
Not at all. So we were always wondering why it's only the Guam Education Board, the only nonpartisan seats that require petitions. CCU, like you said, the public auditor, the attorney general, those are our other nonpartisan seats. None of them require except the Guam Education Board.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And Mr. Chair, that's a bill that I'll be introducing. And of course, I'll seek your co-sponsorship on that one, maybe, if that, because it just seems we need to keep everything, you know, the same with everyone, being fair throughout any boards that are being elected through the public. Other than that, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you, Senator Taitui. Senator Tulai.
Thank you all for your testimony. And I appreciate the recommendations. I just find it curious. So part of the bill says that this is because of institutional knowledge to reduce frequent turnover and ensure consistent leadership. But I remember when they tried to do this for the Guam legislature, the testimony was, I think there were some in favor, but the majority of it was against, because they wanted to be able to remove what they called those who they didn't agree with or did not think were doing good service pretty much immediately. So I just wanted to ask about this institutional knowledge. Do you think it's something that they can't overcome? For example, we have new senators all the time with no institutional knowledge. We expect them to get up to speed and do their job. Do you think that's a problem for these who are being elected to the Board of Education? Because I've found them to be very competent individuals and seemingly responsible to get updated on what's going on. Do you think the superintendent and the staff is able to bring all the board members up to speed on these issues that are that they have to deal with?
I would say in theory, yes. I can tell you after a couple of years in practice, not always. And there's an opportunity, especially when we bring people in that are new to serving in an environment. We're supposed to have specific kinds of board training, and there is a need still in that area, because when you come, depending on what sector you're coming from, if you're the big dog and now you're in an advisory role, policy board, it's a different role. And it takes a little time to acclimate to that. So, and the other thing is, we're a very large agency. We have 3,500 folks who impact 24,000 families. There are a lot of moving parts, and it takes time to learn and understand those. So we need someone that's going to be there for a few years, and up to 2 terms I think is fine. 8 years to really get a working knowledge of what works and what does not. And I've been, Clark County School District in Las Vegas, one of the largest ones, uses a similar model. Board members there frequently go on for a political career, but that's a different matter entirely.
I can't hear you. What is?
Okay, anyway, I was just trying to say other jurisdictions use this kind of a model, and it's very effective to having continuity at the same time bringing in fresh perspectives to the work that's going on.
All right, Dr. Menench.
Thank you. Thank you, Senators. Just a brief comment about term limits and other things. In my experience on this board and on other boards, what happens is when you have career employees that are part of the agency, they end up playing games with the board. But if you have board members with experience who've been there, done that, you can tell. Just as at the legislature, if you've been on the legislature long enough, you'll see the same gaming types of patterns that the employees will try to play with you. And if you're a board member with experience, you're able to spot those a bit more. And what I mean by that is you'll ask the agency to be accountable on things, and they'll try their best to time you out so that time you out of either the election cycle or time you out of the opinion cycle, and use dilatory tactics to try to get you to give up. And if you're an experienced board member, you don't let that happen. And so and to be blunt, you don't just parachute into the board and know these things. This is something that takes a little bit of experience to do. So that would be my collegial input on that point. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can you expound on why you want all elected versus appointed members?
To be elected, all elected, simply because in reality, the governor does appoint and nominate. There's a bureaucratic process. It does take legislative time also. But in general, I'm not really even sure, and I've been both appointed and elected board member, and I think that, and both are fine, you're treated the same, but actually elected board members are treated more prestigiously than the appointed board members. That's one point. And the other point is simply, when you're elected, you're more keenly attached to the voting public than you are than if you're appointed. If you're appointed, I mean, there's no fear that people are going to rise up and not elect you the next time. So there is an accountability issue a little bit that exists. But also, it gives a number of other advantages. As I mentioned, we could have younger candidates run, and so on and so forth. And also related to the point Senator Teitig made, I agree with taking off the signature block, but I would charge candidates a fee that'll keep the riffraff off of the election ballot. That is, charge them $250, $500, have that money donated to the education system or whatever, but it will keep nuisance candidates or vanity candidates off of the ballot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, too. So we do have other boards that are intended to be the same as this bill is proposing, where they would be staggered and they would be long terms. The terms of some of those boards, like UOG, they exceed the term of a governor. They're 6-year terms to the hospital, to the UOG. They're supposed to be to isolate them from influence by governors, I think. But I'm not really seeing that, and I'm in these 6-year appointments, and here extending the term, I kind of agree with those in the public who's, I mean, I would love to see longer terms, for example, in the legislature, because I think they could get better work done. But if we want to change people who we think are not doing a good job, then we have to weigh that as well. So I'm going to think about it. But that's what the longer terms are going to do. They're going to prevent the public from removing those who they feel are not acting in the best interests of the public or the Department of Education. But I agree with Dr. McNinch. I've seen that happen with boards where if they're not well-versed in government, for example, or how this agency runs, or even the powers of the board, that's a big one, then they get kind of, they're shy and they're hesitant to really flex that power that they do have and to act independently. They wait and they act in accordance with what the directors are proposing and things like this, sometimes to the detriment, not always, but just that sometimes happens. So, all right, well, I appreciate again all your testimony and your suggestions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Talai. Vice Speaker Addett.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make Dr. McNitchie wanted to say something when Senator Talai was speaking.
Thank you, Senators. And just very briefly, I would make recalling some of these elected board members, if they're going to have longer terms, a little bit easier. And there's simple ways to do that. And also, when I've been on the board and there's a board member, and I've been on many boards, when there's a board member not doing their job, I call them out on it. I literally do. And, people get mad at me for it. I don't care. Especially now, I'm over 60. I really don't care. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McNitch. Ms. Pangilinan, in the past, we've had issues with actually having a full slate of candidates for the Education Board, haven't we?
Yes.
And what was done in that process?
The other thing that's unique to the Guam Education Board is that there are no write-ins. So whoever we have to put on the ballot that have met all the requirements of the Guam Election Commission, we put them on the ballot, and that's all we do. As far as from the 14 years I've been there, they've been just enough candidates, like 6. So only one time was there more than the 6 seats. There was only one time, I think.
So Dr. McNitch was recommending, lowering the age, right, for a board member on the Education Board. I think from 25 to 18, maybe at 21 would be a happy medium. So I'm not sure whether, is it just by our local statutes that we're at 25?
And it would be covered only in the statute, so that could be changed right in here, and nothing else would be affected as far as the Guam Election Commission goes.
Yeah, so also the issue with the gathering signatures for the petitions, and I think Senator Taidewi, really state that well, that other nonpartisan boards, they don't gather signatures, so maybe that's something as well that this can move forward with, right?
Yeah, just take it off this part of the bill.
Okay. And I know we spoke about staggering and, institutional knowledge, and, there's a lot of points to that because, a term goes by pretty quickly, and when it does go by, unfortunately, some folks may say, well, I don't want to run any longer, or I want to run some more, and, they spend time trying to campaign to get reelected onto the school board. And I think there is there's no process in this board, is there, on like other boards where if they don't attend 3 consecutive meetings or whatever it is, they can be removed from the board?
Our experience at the Guam Election Commission, it's 3 unexcused absences.
Dr. McNitch?
Yeah, and if I recall, it's the board itself that regulates its own members and can remove members if they so desire, and in general. But yeah, that would be my.
So all your years on the board, have you ever seen individuals that have not attended consistently and were still?
And I've threatened them. I've said, don't make me call you out in public. And I've called them on the phone. I've went to their places of work. I've done all kinds of things like that. That's just how I am. I mean, anybody knows me knows I'm like this. And that's just, that's how you have to be. We have a fiduciary responsibility to those young people on that board. And we're here to serve the public and those young people. And if somebody wants to be on the board just to show up at graduations and smile to the crowd, that's not why you're on the board. You're on the board to serve the public and serve the children and serve the government in general. This is an important board. It's probably one of the more important boards that you'll ever have to deal with as a legislature. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's the only questions I have.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Calvo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for being here and for offering your testimonies. I don't really have any question. I co-sponsored this bill because this bill is about ensuring stability and continuity in Guam's education governance. Too frequent turnover disrupts long-term planning and undermines institutional knowledge. I'm the third person to mention that term today. The programs that begin under one board are left unfinished by the next, and thus that's the reason why I support this bill and I decided to be a co-sponsor. On that note, there's not much I need to ask, but I think extending the term limit is a sensible way to do it, just so we don't have to disrupt matters. Staggering is another sensible way to do it. I just don't see where we have to extend it way too far. But then again, Dr. McNitch offered earlier that there's a chance to remove board members when they do not perform well or they do absences. So I'm not really worried about extending the tenure for board members, so to speak. On that note, I'd like to thank you guys again for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Calvo. Senator Gumatauta.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the panel for being with us this afternoon. Mr. Chair, interestingly, I came across some, as doing my research ahead of the hearing today, in their findings by the 30th Guam Legislature, our predecessor in the 30th, the committee wrote then that since the passage of Public Law 26-26 that created the Guam Education Policy Board, whose membership composed of elected individuals, Mr. Chair, they wrote that there has been a constant lack of accountability with the education of our students and the management of public funds for education. Even going further, that since the creation of the Policy Board, there's been constant confusion over the accountability of public education. The Education Policy Board has been operating, and I think it was in the intent for Public Law 26-26, that they've been operating as a fourth branch of government, often creating its own rules without regard to its effect on the entire government, and yet when it finds itself in a position of hardship, the governor of Guam, us in the Guam legislature are faced with the trouble of saving DOE, often having to negate the responsibilities of other government entities under its direct control. Now, I just had one question. Is there one vacancy still on the policy board today? You're all full now, you're full complement? As recently? Okay. Now, based on the mixed reactions by board members back in 2023, again, going back, Mr. Chair, prior to our being a part of this particular legislature regarding Bill 117-37, which proposed to assign the control and direction of all DOE funds to the Guam Education Board, it was reported that the board would meet following the September 2023 public hearing to develop an opinion on the bill. And I don't know if on the record, Dr. McNitch or Superintendent, if you can, but for the record, are you aware of any position that the board might have taken to establish on the proposal and what improvements, if any, have been made in the last couple of years with regard to opening up more lines of communication and collaboration between board members and DOE management, particularly in response to efforts by the board's vice chair at the time, I believe it was Maria Gutierrez, who attempted to intervene with respect to concerns raised by parents, but was advised that those issues were, quote, operational. Dr. McNitch, please. Your insight's key here.
With regard to your question of a formal recommendation, I don't have recollection of any being prepared.
All right, thank you, Dr. Swanson. Dr. McNitch, can you recall?
Thank you, Senator, certainly for the question. It's very frustrating serving on the Guam Education Board because we're constantly told we don't govern anything. We only advise on things, and we select the superintendent. It's very frustrating sometimes, especially when parents do bring us problems. And we're even told we're micromanaging, even when we sometimes, and this is in the past, not with the current superintendent, when we refer problems that parents have to the administration, we are accused of micromanaging. And trust me, they didn't get away with telling me that, because they're supposed to, when a person has a petition to the government, a complaint to the government, is supposed to be processed. And who guards the guardians? That's what the question is. Who guards the guardians themselves? And in the case of at least the education system, the superintendent was right. It's a complex, huge organization, and it has a lot of moving parts. And especially as a board member, even with this very hearing on our little text chat that we have, all the board members were afraid of crafting official input to the legislature for fear of violating the open government law. Simply just even trying to give the legislature an opinion on the consensus of the board, everybody was scared to death. And I just said, go ahead and say it and let the senators know. I think that we need to, sometimes we're our own worst enemy. And sometimes I love the open government law, but maybe there needs to be some more common sense applications made toward it. Of course we want board members to talk to the legislature. Of course we want board members to talk amongst themselves about legislation, even though we don't have an official meeting to do so. That's what the issue was. Oh, we can't talk about policy outside of the meeting. It's not policy. It's trying. When we testify here, our purpose is to try to give senators the best information possible to make the best decisions possible. And the open government law shouldn't, impede that at all, in my view. And so certainly, sometimes we have had board members go a little bit over the top. And when they do, again, I'll call them out on it. I'm like, you're not supposed to do that, because they'll overtly do something wrong. But most board members are as Senator Talahe mentioned, they're very well intentioned. They have a real heart for the students, and they especially don't want to make mistakes. But sometimes when we make mistakes, we learn. And we need to learn from some of these things, including how can we talk to the legislature when we're not officially meeting. That's something we need to learn.
No, and that's important, Dr. McNitch. I think going back to the idea of either, doing things, making mistakes, and just trying to correct them, which kind of gets me to my second question, and I'll leave it at this, Mr. Chair. But in recommending the approval of the measure in Public Law 30-183 that established, again, the Guam Education Board, the Education Committee at the time wrote that it intended to provide for a policy decision based on a proven success and accountability of the respective educational boards of the University of Guam and the Guam Community College. What discussion, if any, has taken place regarding the possibility of modifying the Education Board's framework so that it mirrors what has been in place for the UOG Board of Regents and the Guam Community College's Board of Trustees? Dr. McNitch, you have an opinion on that?
I didn't mean to leave my microphone on. I apologize.
Your 2 cents is good on it.
Thank you, Senators. In the Guam Code, 17 GCA 16A calls for a joint Board of Education. I think I've been on the board 7 years, and we've met twice, and nothing was ever done. Mainly because even to get a quorum with 3 boards of that size, none of them take it seriously, I hate to say, and so nothing gets done. And so the model an ideal model, if you're talking about a unified board, a top to bottom board from higher education all the way down to pre-K, the New York system, the regents at the New York system have that kind of system, and there's some value to that. But there's even more value in getting UOG, GCC, and the Guam school systems working better together. And every time we turn around, there are things that try to unthread or derail that process. And one of them is how we certify teachers. We simply do not do that very well here. We don't train teachers in the way we're supposed to, and that should be an active conversation between GDOE, GCC, and UOG, and it simply doesn't happen because of the way things are structured. And so certainly I believe that through leadership and applying some of these principles, I think good changes can be made and good discussions can be made. These things should be discussed, and they should be discussed a lot. And we need to listen often to our parents and students also. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Doctor. And again, that's what this is for that discussion. So I do appreciate you again, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator Gubatata. Thank you to all who participated in this public hearing on Bill number 20138. Your valuable insights and testimony are essential as we work to refine this legislation to best serve our educators and our students. With the input received from all of you, we are hopeful that we can improve this legislation before we put it on the session agenda.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to make sure I can get this in. The comment that I made earlier on introducing legislation to take away the petitions, if can, to see if it's germane enough to include it into the bill itself, or, you know, I don't have to introduce the whole bill, but I know that we try and get all election bills done prior, and so just a consideration to maybe put that section into the bill too as well, if it is germane, okay? If it's
Absolutely.
not, then that's okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Taitui. This now concludes the public hearing for Bill number 201-38. At this time, we'll go ahead and dismiss the panel if you're not here to testify for the next bill. And we'll call for a recess to prepare for the next hearing on Bill number 204-38. We are now in recess. Don't tell me. The time is now 2:44, and we're back from recess. At this time, we'll be hearing Bill number 204-38 COR, introduced by myself, Senator Vincent A.V. Borja, an act to amend subsection 3102.3 of Article 1, Chapter 3, Division 2, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to extending terms of office. Oops, sorry, wrong one. (204-38 COR), an act to amend subsection 3102.1 and 3125 of Article 1, Chapter 3, Division 2, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to requiring Guam Education Board confirmation of deputy superintendent appointments to enhance oversight, accountability, and focus on student outcomes. And now I'll proceed with my opening remarks. Buenas and Hafide, my colleagues and the people of Guam. We're now hearing testimony on Bill 204-38, an act designed to strengthen the governance and collaborative leadership within the Guam Department of Education. As public servants, it's our duty to ensure that our systems of leadership are transparent, accountable, and aligned with the best interests of our students. This legislation addresses a gap in our current structure. I've heard from many board members of the Guam Education Board who feel their authority is limited, with the primary power being the appointment of a superintendent. This can create a disconnect between the board's oversight responsibility and the department's executive management. Bill 204 proposes a clear solution. It requires that the superintendent's appointments for deputy superintendents be confirmed by the Guam Education Board. The bill also mandates that the qualification for these key positions be publicly posted and approved by the board. This is not about undermining the superintendent's authority to build a management team. Rather, it's about fostering a more cohesive and collaborative relationship between GDOE leadership and the board. It ensures that leadership selections are transparent and that the entire governance team is unified in its mission. I'd like to thank my co-sponsors for their partnership on this important reform, Senator Shetty Calvo, Senator Vice Speaker Tony Atta, Senator Tina Rose Munoz-Barnes, and Senator Sean Gumatau. The goal here is straightforward: to enhance responsibility, accountability, and integrity within our education system. I look forward to a meaningful discussion how we can achieve this together. With that, we'll go ahead and start with our only person here to testify, Superintendent Swanson. You can go ahead and begin.
Thank you, Senator Borja. Thank you for being here, Senators. I am testifying in support of the bill, and following testimony is presented from my perspective as the incumbent superintendent of Guam Department of Education. The testimony is developed through my professional experience in formal education over a lifetime and is not the testimony of the Guam Education Board. The Guam Education Board may have somewhat different perspectives and wish to present them separately. In agreement with the legislative intent, I generally support and agree with the existing language and proposed language as well. There's one addition that is prudent to supporting the role and the work of the superintendent, and that is the need to provide a chief of staff. In my current role, there have been multiple occasions that need executive emphasis and coordination among and within the staff and impacting effective operations. There have been several occasions as we work to coordinate Guam Education Board requirements, legislative requirements, and collaboration with other offices and federal entities that could have been handled at the chief of staff level rather than by the superintendent. If I were to continue in the superintendent role, my next effort, given the personnel costs that impact budgets, would be to realign the 3 deputy superintendent positions and use the 4th full-time equivalent to create a chief of staff position. A primary role would be to include coordination of time, projects, and local government communication and coordination. The current language, if modified to allow the chief of staff position between the superintendent and deputy superintendents, is recommended. I will say, too, that I have discussed this with the board leadership, and they agree that a chief of staff is an appropriate kind of position. At the same time, increasing the number of folks at the deputy level is not what we're considering, but staying within that framework. So this would allow the superintendent to realign the functions under those deputies and then establish the role of the chief of staff. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to provide input in the legislative process.
Siduos Masi, Dr. Swanson, for your testimony. And now I'll open up the floor for questions. I'll start with Senator Taitigui.
Sujus Masu, Mr. Chair. Sorry for that short pause. I had an opportunity, Mr. Swanson, to talk to you before we went into this public hearing, and without reading your testimony, actually, to kind of, fill out what you're going to say today, without reading it, and also giving you my perspective on it. Many of us, us legislators, we have a responsibility to the people of Guam, and we have a responsibility to hire those individuals who have the same perspective as we do, and that is to serve the people, to be transparent, accountable in every avenue. And a superintendent, if he was to hire individuals to be his right-hand individuals, to follow the directions, to be able to have the insight and know-how of your movement forward, then you should be able to choose who that would be. As long as they have the requirements, that they got a degree, they have check all the boxes to being accountable, their background is for that particular position with experience. My concern is, there's been so much delay when it comes to procurement, right? I mean, that's one of the issues that you've had to deal with through the whole time you were superintendent. One of the biggest thorns in your side. And trying to move things forward, it becomes very difficult. So if you were to choose, let's say do you feel first, based on this bill, if it should pass, are you given the authority to be able to at least appoint certain deputies, and then they have to go up against the board to see if they are accepted? Is that how you see this bill?
The way the language is written at this point, that is oppositional, if you want to put it that way. I would certainly want to have the collaborative environment with the board to be able to agree on those individuals ahead of time. But at the end of the day, the people that I have is the team that I have, and I have to be able to work with them and trust that they're going to do the
Right.
things that I want them to do. So
that answers my question.
The ability to pick your team, if you're going to be held accountable for the effectiveness of the team, then we need to have the ability to pick the team.
Right.
Otherwise, someone else whoever made that decision can have the responsibility that goes with it.
And that's what the board does. There was so much, kickback back in the 30th Guam legislation about the Guam Board of Education trying to be overreaching and trying to control, the operations of Department of Education. And we found that was not the intent, and it caused more issues and problems back in the 30th Guam, that's 2008, 2009, that we wanted to ensure there was a fine line between the two. And that's what this board was all about. Now, so that being said, that's your perspective of this bill, that what would happen. But what would happen if the board doesn't like the person you choose for some reason? Then you have to go out and find somebody else, and that may take some time. Are there guidelines and rules and regulations on how long it takes for you to actually put somebody in front of the board to decide on it? It just so much bureaucracy, that we've added to an already, Department of Education that took years to try and put that line between what is the superintendent's responsibility and what is the board of directors' responsibility? So, I don't support this. I think that we should give the authority to the superintendent, and he is accountable for everything he does, down to who he brings on board. Because like you said earlier, you're accountable for that individual and have to be able to work with you during your term. So, the thing is, the board already has to approve your employment. So they approve you. They put their confidence in you. Now it's your turn to do the job that you were voted in by the board. not the board to come in and start being micromanaging on what you're supposed to do, tell you who to work with. It just doesn't make sense. We're going backwards, not forward, especially since we had to go down this road for many years of trying to put that wedge between. So I appreciate your comments, especially, what you said. You can hear it in your voice that you should be able to know who you're going to be able to work with. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Taitagwe. Senator Tulahi.
Sejus Masi. Mr. Superintendent, I agree with your suggestion that you want to be able to hire a chief of staff. Would you want that person to be unclassified?
That is something that we really need to look more closely. I think that they should also be exempt as the deputies are, because you really do have to pick. That's your right hand.
Right.
And sometimes I've been in systems where they are in a classified environment and they've worked over a career to get there, and sometimes that's a good match and sometimes it's not a good match. And my experience in this setting here on Guam with our Department of Education and our community, I need to be able to have that not be locked into and locked up in boilerplate of civil service rules.
All right, I agree to a certain extent, and that you've been reasonable in the request that instead of one of these deputies, you kind of choose to consolidate some of the positions and put a chief of staff and then have a couple deputies as opposed to 4. But do you know the status of the selection of the next superintendent?
No. Well, here's what I do know about the process. The board is meeting this Friday. They've announced a meeting that go into special executive session. I'm not part of that. They will discuss the candidates they've interviewed and come to some consensus about how they're going to vote. Then they'll come back out into an open public session and vote. Whether or not they have selected someone, I don't know. We'll find out on Friday.
Who are the members of the selection committee?
There was Ms. Gutierrez, Ms. Angel, and Dr. McNish, and then conversation and consultation with the other members amongst themselves.
All right, thank you.
Those 3, and then our HR director was on top of the process of putting it together and screening it and making sure everyone that applied was
with the law
and in compliance.
All right, thank you. For me, my concern with the bill is that I don't want to go backwards where we have a superintendent who cannot act, cannot make things happen for DOE. I think that's absolutely critical. It's what we've been suffering, is just not being able to move things fast enough at DOE. And I think if they do a good job with selection of superintendent, then, I want to empower that superintendent to do whatever they need to do. Ironically, I feel the opposite about deputies in general. I feel like we have a merit system, and you're either in the merit system or you're out. And if you're out of the merit system, then you are subject to appointment and confirmation by the legislature, for example, directors. But this deputy position is in the middle, and it's neither confirmed by the legislature, nor is it a merit position, and I feel like something's wrong with that. Like, why do we have all these deputies in these agencies who don't answer to anyone? They don't answer under the merit system, they don't answer under the confirmation by the legislature system. And some of them have very long terms as well. But for DOE, yeah, this was a very long fought process to get these deputies, to get the selection to be done by the superintendent, who is selected by a board completely outside of the legislature. And I still support that. And I would like to see someone such as you be empowered to do what you need to do. And I'm even afraid that some of the things that you have tried to do has been delayed because of people around you sometimes. So, yeah, that would be my concern. And then I feel like the board has to have its own way to manage the superintendent through its contract, through its hiring and qualifications, and maybe in its contract it sets things that have to be accomplished during the term or on a timeline or something. And if that doesn't happen, then that's between them and the superintendent and the contract, right? However, bringing these deputies before the board to me, it kind of holds the superintendent hostage again to select someone that a board member might like so that the board would find favor with the superintendent. And I don't know, I've been in government too long to see these kinds of things.
There's always room for things to go wrong, and
yes.
we don't want that. But
all right.
My preference, then the way that I've operated is to try and identify the people and share that collaboratively with the board,
yes.
but not by way of seeking approval, but to at least the courtesy for them to know and understand.
Sharing the information promptly. I want to thank you for being here despite your term ending very shortly. I really appreciate that you're here and giving us your best recommendations for the people of Guam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Talai. Vice Speaker Addett.
No questions.
He has no. Senator Calvo, do you have any questions or comments?
I really don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank Mr. Swanson for being here and also for your years of service. Thank you.
No,
thank you, Mr.
It's
Chair.
been a pleasure. A lot of sweat, but a pleasure.
Well, that concludes the, any last questions, comments? So we have, no. Sudas Masi, Dr. Swanson, for coming down here in your testimony for both bills. And thank you to all who participated in today's public hearing on bills numbers 201 and 204. Your insights and testimony are essential as we work to refine the legislation to best serve our educators in our community. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the diverse perspectives shared today, including concerns and constructive feedback. Please know that your input is not only heard, but deeply valued as part of this process. The bill, like all legislation, is a collaborative effort, and through its civic engagement like yours, that will continue to ensure that it reflects the needs and priorities of our islands. I remain committed to considering all viewpoints as we move forward, and I'm hopeful that with the input received today, we can improve and strengthen the bills before it is placed on this session agenda. The committee will continue to accept written testimony on these bills within 7 days from today, which may be addressed to myself, Senator Vincent Borja, Chairman of the Committee on Education, Libraries, and Public Broadcasting, and Mel Tadine, Building Suite 502-238, Archbishop Flores Street, Hagåtña, Guam, 96910. You may also send your testimonies to contact@senatorvinceborja.com. This afternoon's public hearing is now adjourned, and the time is now 3:03 p.m.